Let's have a laugh at your expense, shall we? Remember, they're just jokes. We're all gonna die soon, and there's no sequel. So...
Free speech is the crucial idea which underpins our democracy. We have the right to express ourselves freely. No one has the right to tell us what we can and can't say. I may, as the saying goes, disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Has been won or not, because many feel that they need to keep shouting, pushing with language, because they feel, for example, there is not equality in whatever sphere it is that we might want to talk about. So that could be gay rights, that could be women's rights, that could be racial justice. How do you feel, Douglas, when we talk about that? Do you feel, when I read your book, it came across to me that you feel a lot of the battles were almost won?
Well, I do. I use this analogy that in many of these areas, it's been my experience in my adult life that it's looked like watching a train reaching the desired destination, that is, at the station of equality. And as it draws in, suddenly getting ahead of steam, shooting off down the tracks, off the tracks, and scattering people in its wake. What I mean by that is the weaponization of things at the stage at which they've never got better, where they're presented as if they've never been worse. And I just urge people to take their foot off that pedal a little bit. That isn't to say don't keep moving, but don't lean on heuristics you've come to very recently this hard.
It's the last time, who cares? Oh. Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist. So, but you all look lovely, all dolled up. You came here in your limos. I came here in a limo tonight, and the licence plate was made by Felicity Huffman. So, no, shush. Once upon a time in Hollywood, nearly 3 hours long, Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him. So... Even Prince Andrew's like, come on, Leo, mate, you know. You're nearly 50, son.
Right. But I must say, somebody out there has beaten me bad. His name is Ricky Gervais, and he was hosting the Golden Globes last night, and he took the opportunity to roast, I mean roast, the powerful. I can't show it to you because they'd sue us if we did, but I can tell you what he did, and it was fabulous. He started up with Apple, who is now making movies, by the way. He went after the tech giant saying they made a movie about doing the right thing. However, they run sweatshops in China. Said this with Tim Cook, the CEO, standing right in front of him. He then told the actors, the writers, and the producers, De Niro, Pacino, all these guys in a room, that they're hypocrites for working for Amazon and for Apple and for Disney, and followed up by saying that if ISIS started a streaming service, they, in the room, would all probably call their agents to get hired by ISIS. But he says the best at the very end, when he said to all of them in the room, he said, if you do win an award tonight, don't use this as a platform to make a political speech, because you're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. So if you win, come up here, accept your little award, thank your agent, thank God, and then bug off.
Off the tracks and scattering people in its wake. What I mean by that is the weaponization of things at the stage at which they've never got better, where they're presented as if they've never been worse. And I just urge people to take their foot off that pedal a little bit. That isn't to say don't keep moving, but don't lean on heuristics you've come to very recently this hard.
Silvana, what would you respond?
Well, I always think it's necessary to really understand that even though my emancipation has reached a certain level where I can say that I now have certain privileges, it doesn't mean to say that that goes for everybody who's part of, let's say, that particular group that's identifying within a certain scope. So let's make it more concrete and say that it's fine if you're a female exec, like myself, for instance. I'm a female party leader. So it's easy for me to say that that's doable, that's possible. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of young women who look like me do not have the same privileges and are still fighting so many battles that maybe I've overcome because of, Lord knows why, could be just my, my dominant character. But it's not to say that that they have the same opportunities and the same privileges, so they still have a long way to go. And I know from experience that it's important for them to have role models and people that speak out on their behalf.
Well, let me pass it back to Douglas then. Do you feel you can always speak as freely as you want to?
Myself, yes. I think that I'm in as it were, a very privileged position. I know this from audiences and readers who are in touch with me, that increasingly the things I describe which have caused career destruction for very eminent people. I mean, thinking of things like the Nobel Prize-winning scientist Tim Hunt, who made this one joke at a conference in Korea, and by the time he'd landed in London, had lost every job he had. I'm saying this has happened to very prominent people. They've either said something that's not that popular anymore, or said something off colour, and so on and so forth. But my point is that all of that stuff trickles down to the workplace. And what I'm struck by now is the extent to which people who are not self-employed journalists and writers feel that they can't say the things that some people in public can say. So, for instance, let me give one very quick example. I did this on the BBC the other week, that this issue came up with this pop singer Sam Smith, who described himself as non-binary. And I got into a certain amount of trouble that didn't bother me, but because I said I don't think there's any such thing, or at least no one's explained what it is sufficiently for me to agree to it. Now, I know from feedback, including feedback in the studio from certain people at the BBC, that this is not an unpopular thing to say. I would think that if you went out to the general public and said, do you think there are people who are non-binary, and if so, can you say what they are? You'd get a fragment of 1% of people able to say that. And so my point on that is not that I've closed the argument on that, but we haven't had the argument on a whole set of things, and it seems only to be a few people who do have a voice in public who can have it.
Celebrities here tonight, I mean legends, icons, yeah? Look, at this table alone, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, but Baby Yoda. Oh, that's Joe Pesci, sorry. It was a big year for paedophile movies. Surviving R. Kelly, Leaving Neverland, Two Popes. Shut up. Shut up. I don't care. I don't care. You could binge watch the entire first season of Afterlife instead of watching this show. That's a show about a man who wants to kill himself because his wife dies of cancer, and it's still more fun than this, okay?
You can have it.
Silvana, you want to? You're nodding your head, not in agreement.
Because I'm always surprised that certain people feel that they need to give their okay for other people to be or think something they don't necessarily understand. It doesn't matter whether I understand the beauty of physical love between two men. There's no point. You don't need my permission to feel and act. So why does Sam Smith or anybody else who considers himself non-binary needs permission from whoever? All that is up to us is to say, if this is important to you and it does not affect me in any type of way, in any type of negative way, I'm going to respect that. So if you say that you're offended by blackface every year, then I don't need to understand how come you're offended. All I need to do is say, this is not my intention. How can I fix it? And if you say you can fix it by stop acting that way, then that's what I'll do, because there is no point. People don't need your permission to be whoever they want to be.
I think it's slightly more complex than that, if I can say so.
Of course.
Let me give one reason why. Actually, the Sam Smith thing was significant. Again, sorry to go on about the BBC. The BBC's reporting of that immediately did what he asked, which was that they changed the pronouns. And some people think this isn't a big thing. Some of us do get a bit stuck on this.
I'm only interrupt you just so everybody
Sure,
is up to speed with the sense of instead of he, she, him, her, non-binary people often want to use they, them. So it would be...
So my point was simply that if you haven't actually had this out in public, you haven't actually discussed much of it, it's a bit strange that a major news organisation would slip into saying exactly what a person had asked themselves to be described as simply because they had asked for it.
Sounds like respect to me.
It's not the
nothing
same,
more, nothing less.
It's not the same thing as respect because it's something which we haven't had out. He himself said, I don't know what it means to be non-binary.
So what?
My suggestion was he should go away and think about it. And in the meantime, we shouldn't all mutilate the language to fit around him.
Why? If I come on this stage and I say to you, I would prefer for you to call me Mr. Simons, why is it a problem to you to just give me that respect?
But I'm afraid that because I care about the language, I didn't particularly want to say they was very good in their performance last night.
Well,
I'm not going to do it simply because of the... Now, there is a more important thing, if I may say so.
Sure,
which is that actually this one is a very niche bit of a thing. Whether a pop star thinks they're non-binary or genderqueer or whatever, is not that significant. Now, there is one that's very significant, which we're all tripping over now, which is the trans one. And you mentioned the thing about the phobia there. There is a real problem in our societies on this one, because actually in the media, people are petrified now of writing about this issue. But outside there in the country, as you can see from a new poll that's about to come out tomorrow, the general public are deeply concerned about being dismissed as transphobes when you're talking about how you deal with children. And that isn't a small concern. It's not just about pronouns. It's a legitimate concern of the general public about the well-being of children. I'm bothered when people make assertions which we haven't litigated in public yet. And on a whole set of issues at the moment, look, the way I see it is, I'm sure you're all people who've seen sheepdogs in operation, but if you see a sheepdog trying to get a herd of sheep, it doesn't need to go and force them into a corner. It goes and, it not even nips, but pretends to nip around the edges, and that way you can make everyone move like this. There is a real and significant risk in our society with the free press at the moment that people coming and making very slight nips around the edges make the whole herd move in another direction, and that is exactly what's happened with this.
What are you worried about will be the end result?
I'm worried that we tell little lies, and we get used to little lies, and then we tell bigger ones. I think it's a lie to pretend that biology doesn't matter. I think it's unwise to pass those things through always simply because of courtesy. Courtesy, I happen to agree, is one of the bedrocks of society. It's very important to be courteous, but that's not... Courtesy has a limit, and the limit is when it makes people...
I used the word respect, and there's a big difference between courtesy and respect. Respect is what we absolutely need in order to live together on this planet as a diverse society, something that is hard to accept for certain people, but we are a diverse society. What we see happening is new perspectives coming in. New people saying we want to have our seat at the table because we can either represent ourselves or, as myself, have been given the mandate to represent certain groups of people. Now, those same people who for decades, if not hundreds of years, have been the dominant factor in deciding what is on the table, are afraid. I do understand. I don't understand what they're afraid of. I think I do, but I'd like to hear from them. And also, I don't understand why it is of such importance to them that other people emancipate in the way they think is best.
Touch. He painted Apple, Disney, and Amazon, all with new streaming platforms, as evil, and he scolded those in attendance for claiming to be woke. But he said that if ISIS started a streaming service, they'd all be calling their agents about getting a job. He ripped those in attendance for relationships with Jeffrey Epstein and warned those who would go on to win an award not to make any political statements in their acceptance speech, saying, quote, "You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg." It was amazing. As you said, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you had to applaud him.
Host Ricky Gervais had very specific instructions for the stars last night. When you win, come up here, get your little award, thank your guy and your agent, and move on. Well, most of them did not follow that advice, as we heard plenty of them last night talk about issues having to do with certainly the wildfires and climate change, as well as women's rights. Well, the big surprise, though, of the night was that the much nominated and much celebrated Scorsese, Pacino, De Niro, Pesci film, The Irishman, was completely shut out, didn't win a thing. And the surprises did not stop there.
Golden Globes host Ricky Gervais opened Hollywood's biggest party in classic Ricky Gervais fashion.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, nearly 3 hours long. Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him. So even Prince Andrew's like, "Come on, Leo, mate, you know, you're nearly 50, son."
Poking fun at Hollywood insiders.
I came here in a limo tonight, and the license plate was made by Felicity Huffman. So, no, shush.
Even drawing gasps from the audience.
Netflix's Bird Box, a movie where people survive by acting like they don't see a thing. Sort of like working for Harvey Weinstein. You did it. I didn't. You did it.
And he didn't stop there.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood emerged as a leading Oscar contender with 3 wins, including Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, and Best Supporting Actor for Brad Pitt, his first Globe since '96. He thanked his co-star, Leonardo DiCaprio.
I also have to thank my partner in crime, LDC. He's an all-star, he's a gent, and I wouldn't be here without you, man. I thank you. Still, I would have shared the raft.
Renee Zellweger nabbed her first Golden Globe since 2004 for Judy.
It's nice to see you. Y'all look pretty good 17 years later.
1917 took home the Best Motion Picture Drama.
This is a huge thing for this movie. It opens in a week wide.
Stealing the thunder from Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, which went home empty-handed. Kate McKinnon presented Ellen DeGeneres with the Carol Burnett Award.
There's no greater feeling than when someone tells me that I've made their day better with my show.
And then there was Tom Hanks, emotional while thanking his family as he accepted the Cecil B. DeMille Award.
A man is... Sorry. A man is blessed. A man is blessed with a family sitting down front like that.
The wildfire tragedy in Australia was on the mind of several Hollywood heavyweights.
When one country faces a climate disaster, we all face a climate disaster.
Russell Crowe, a native Australian, took home the trophy for playing Roger Ailes in The Loudest Voice.
Russell Crowe!
But he wasn't in attendance because he was back home in Australia. Shortly after winning, he posted on Instagram thanking his co-stars, along with this video showing a makeshift fire truck.
And all the stuff you need for fighting fires.
Well, that's the thing. People usually go to Hollywood, go to these movies to escape the reality show known as Today. And I think he was proper right out of the bat, calling it out and hoping it stopped. You have one more for us, Steve.
Yes, back to reliable sources. Bravo to New York Times writer and editor Bari Weiss. She weighed in on the media coverage of the recent anti-Semitic attacks compared to how they covered the attack on Hispanics at the Walmart in El Paso. Watch.
If the press had said that this massacre was the result of communal friction, that it was complicated, that it needed proper context, that the problem was really gentrification or economic inequality or even racism, the moral bankruptcy of that would be immediately apparent to everyone. And yet that is the kind of thing that we are hearing about the violence that's breaking out in places like Crown Heights, Borough Park, Williamsburg, Jersey City, and now Muncie with the machete attack. We're not hearing the kind of moral clarity that we hear when the attacker is a white supremacist. And the question is why?
Wow. You got to check that out.